Good evening, everyone. My name is Dan Ferreira, and the claim I will be refuting today is that uniforms positively impact students. Sean made this claim with three subclaims stating that first, uniforms positively impact students by improving safety and social life. Second, that they positively impact a student's academic performance. And third, that they save the student's parents money. So going back to his first claim that uniforms improve safety and social life, in Sean's speech, the evidence he used, or rather his claims that he made, he only made assertions. He had no real evidence to back up these claims. He had a few testimonials. However, these testimonials were from sources that were news sites, and they weren't like reputable articles. They were mostly news sites. And if you check the news sites, the news sites do not cite any research or actual data. So there's no good evidence, and there's also no statistical evidence. A big point he made was he said that gang relations dropped 46% when a certain school started using uniforms. However, since it was from a news source that could have been biased, we can't actually use this fact. Another source he used was a thesis written by Bobby Jo Adams, who was a student at Rowan University. She conducted an experiment at a local school where they had 7th and 8th graders they used to not wear uniforms, but then they started to wear uniforms. And they concluded that there is no significant difference found between the mean number of disciplinary referrals between the experimental group, which were the students who wore uniforms, and the control group. So essentially, uniforms had no real effect on the safety of the students since disciplinary actions didn't really change. Now, the second subclaim that Sean made was that uniforms positively impact a student's academics. However, I claim that there is little to no correlation due to the lack of evidence. His biggest point was that graduation rates rose 11% with schools that use uniforms, and they dropped 4.6% with students who did not wear uniforms. However, the source he used was once again a news site, and this site actually didn't take a side on the argument, it just brought up both sides of the argument for the reader to choose for themselves. So this evidence doesn't actually help further his claim. And going back to the experiment by Bobby Adams, this experiment also measured academic performance of the students, and it showed that there was no significant difference between the experimental group and the control group in regards to the mean GPA. It should be noted that students in the control group, so who didn't wear uniforms, actually had a higher mean GPA than the experiment. So students who did wear uniforms actually had a lower GPA than students who didn't wear uniforms. So if anything, you could say that there was an inverse correlation between uniforms and academics. However, there's still a lack of evidence, so you can't say anything for sure. And Sean's final subclaim was that uniforms save money. He was a little unclear, so I assumed that he was talking about the students' parents who purchased the clothing for the students. Now, while the uniforms may save money, if you go to Target and buy clothes there rather than buying a uniform, the average cost of an outfit from Target is around $22 for boys and $25 for girls. And the cost that Sean used was a survey by the NAESP, and they found that the average cost of a uniform for students is $150 per student per year. However, by doing simple math, if you buy clothes from Target, it's roughly the same price, if not cheaper. So uniforms aren't necessarily more cost effective, but clothes cost about the same, so it doesn't necessarily matter or show any significance. He also claimed that uniforms, if purchased, can be handed down between students, but that doesn't really support his claim that they save money since you're still purchasing the uniform. So in conclusion, Sean's claim that uniforms positively impact students had no correlation between the impact of the students and the uniforms, since there was a lack of evidence, and yeah, that's it.
All right, well, I like the idea that you're going after the evidence that the advocate uses or the lack of evidence. The places where there was evidence being cited, you suggest that because it comes from a news site, there's some problem with that. I'm not sure that that's an appropriate answer on that. Some news sites may have some problems with them. You would have to explain that their evidence came from one of these news sites that had specific problems, whether it is some political bias or whether it is fake news or whatever the heck it is that people are talking about. Otherwise, I think you're painting with a broad brush there, and I think you want to be a little bit careful about that. I think the better argument is that none of the evidence is very specific in accounting for how big a difference that it made or supposedly made. The one place that you talk about directly the issue that the advocate presented was on the decreased gang activity, and your answer on this really is that that information came from a news source and is potentially biased, and that's an assertion on your part without knowing why it is that we would see bias there. I think the better argument is the Adams evidence that says, look, we did this study and we found no significant difference between the groups who had uniforms or didn't have uniforms, and you've got some information on their GPAs, for instance, that applies there. I think that would work. The notion that this one school reported a change in gang activity. How generalizable is that? If it's not been seen other places, is it really sufficient to reach a conclusion on? I think there are some additional presses that you could put into place here that would help you a little bit more. On the second point concerning academic performance, again, this is a place where I think you got a little bit more out of the evidence that you found than you should be getting more out of the evidence that you've got here, because you actually have some pretty good information here. Their evidence talks about graduation rates, and you've got some information here that suggests that there's no significant difference on GPAs. So how can we reach the inference that it makes a difference academically based on graduate rates, or why is the GPA comparison, the one that you're using, the better one to make? I think you need to kind of give an explanation on that particular point. Third point on cost issues, well, it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. That seems to be the argument you're making. They're still going to have to buy clothes. Clothes cost money. The question of how much money you're going to have to spend, there are probably different ways to analyze this and suggest that one group or the other is going to end up spending more money. I'm wondering if we've had school uniforms for a long period of time, why it is we don't have some comparable data on this. That seems like it would make a little bit of sense. And again, the idea that you're going to save money in the long run, how important is that? Your speech kind of ends abruptly. We got the Porky Pig exit there, so you want to be careful about that. All right, thank you.